Welcome to Startup Equity Basics. This is section 4 where we will look at contingent equity and things that are non-equity but look like equity or track to equity. First, we'll look at contingent equity. What is meant by contingent equity? This is equity that is owned. It's issued, the holder has the right to vote it, owns it, but upon certain contingencies, these contingencies are sometimes called trigger events. If these trigger events occur, the company may reacquire the equity. The company may repurchase or grab back the equity. So what are these contingent rights? Where does this apply? A very common one is company right of repurchase that we'll talk about, and company option to redeem stock, sometimes called a call option. The first one, the right of repurchase, what is this and how does it operate? This is in respect of a service provider. So we have a service provider, but instead of giving the service provider a stock option, like we talked about in a prior section, we're actually issuing shares, and the service provider is buying the shares. The service provider owns the shares, bought, paid for, voting stock. But the shares still have a vesting schedule. So like an option, they will vest over time. What does that mean? Upon a termination of the service provider, the termination in this context is the trigger event, the contingent event. Upon a termination, the company can repurchase any unvested shares. This is sometimes called a clawback because it means that although the shares have been purchased by the service provider and the service provider owns the shares, the company can claw them back upon the trigger event for the unvested portion. And the price the company pays to claw them back is typically cost. What cost means is the company will pay the same original price that the service provider paid for the shares. We refer to this sometimes as a negative vesting. The service provider is earning the right to keep the shares. Contrast this to an option. In a stock option, the service provider has not yet bought the shares, but has the right to buy them in the future. But the vesting is providing him the right, he is earning the right to purchase in the future. Here, the service provider has already bought the shares, but they're contingent, and he's earning the right to keep them. If he's terminated, the company can, doesn't have to, but can and usually will, claw back the unvested shares. Now, company redemption rights are far less frequent. These are sometimes called company call option. And this will occur where a company will require investors to sell stock back to the company under certain circumstances. In this case, the stock being sold back will be sold at the fair market value at the time of sale. So this isn't a repurchase for cost. This is a sale where a negotiated price or an appraisal is done to determine what's the fair market value of the stock that's held by those investors, and that value has to be paid for by the company to reacquire those shares. This type of redemption right will usually be dependent on some type of a time or event contingency. For example, the company has failed to go public within 5 years, and at that point in time, the company has the right to call back the stock. This is rare. You will very, very rarely see this right in a startup. Okay. So let's look at a few things that are not equity, will never be equity, are not rights to obtain equity, but are either track to equity or have some relationship to equity. Rights that track to equity but do not ever become equity. Some of the rights that fall into this category include phantom units, stock appreciation rights, sometimes called SARs, and to some extent royalties can be classified this way. So looking first at phantom units or phantom stock. Phantom stock provides the holder with a payout upon typically a liquidation event. There'll be some sort of event that will trigger the payout, but it's often used upon a liquidation event. So the holder has the right to receive a payout, most often a cash payout, upon the time that the company is sold or has some other liquidation event. How much of a payout? What is the amount of this payout? That's where it's tracked to the equity. The amount of payout that the holder will get will be equal to the value of some set number of shares. This is what the units are. So the holder has X number of units, and those units may be equal to the value of 1-to-1 for the shares. At the time of the liquidation, whatever the value of common stock is at that time, the holder will have the right to get that payout. Now notice that they never actually get stock. The holder does not get common stock and then sell it. There is no stock or equity provided to the holder of the phantom unit. All he has the right to receive is the payout. But the payout, the value, how much he's paid, is equal to some number of shares, some equity. Stock appreciation rights, or SARs. This is a payout upon exercise. So they're a little different in that the holder has a right that allows him or her to exercise at a future time, and there may be a vesting. When he exercises, he's not getting stock, but he's getting a payout. What is the payout? How is it computed? The payout will be the spread. The spread meaning the difference between the fair market value at the time he exercised and the exercise price. So stock appreciation rights will have an exercise price associated with them. They're more similar to an option in that way. But again, they're not exercised for stock, unlike an option. They're exercised and the holder receives a payout equal to the spread. Sometimes we'll see tandem SARs. This is where the stock appreciation right, the SAR, is granted together with an actual option. So the service provider is given an option to purchase stock in the future and a SAR which will pay the spread upon an exercise. Tandem SARs are pretty common, or more common, to help provide the holder with a means to either pay for the taxes on the exercise or to pay the exercise price. Okay, now we'll look at a couple of things. The last thing that's non-equity, which is, we talked about royalties. So a royalty is a percent of revenue or profits that is provided typically on a certain product, normally associated with a license. So a party is licensing a product or software or some mechanism to the company, in exchange for which, in exchange for the right to use this product or software, the company provides a percentage of the revenues or profits obtained on that product back to the holder, the owner of the product being licensed. Royalties are typically going to be ongoing events. So every quarter, whatever the payout period is, every quarter, every month, every half year, the revenues or the profits are computed, the percent payout is computed, and the payout is made, and it's ongoing so long as the company holds this license or wants to use it. Maybe there's other conditions or a cap where the royalty decreases over time, but it's basically, over at least a period of some time, an ongoing payout. Investment contracts is another interesting kind of investment vehicle where the investor putting money into the company is not getting stock. Instead, he is getting the right to have a payout made to him based on company meeting certain future goals. Typically, we're talking about when the company reaches a certain amount of revenue or profits in the future, then at that time the company pays back the investors based on some sort of fixed percentage of the profits. And it's not an ongoing, it's usually a one-time, or maybe it's broken up into a few different payments, but it's kind of a one-time amount. Once the company reaches this profitability, the investor is paid back his investment plus a certain percentage of the profits. So that's an investment contract. Again, although it's based on the company's success, like equity would be, it is not equity. It is not stock. Okay, so what do we learn in this section? First of all, contingent equity is equity that's actually issued. It's owned and it's issued. It can be voted, but it can be taken away. So even though it's owned, if the trigger under certain contingent events, the trigger events occur, and it's not fully vested, the unvested portion can be grabbed back by the company. Phantom units and SARs are not equity. They track to equity. Their payments, the way in which they pay out, is related to what equity would pay out, but it is not equity. Okay, this completes our section 4. Thank you.